March 2014. Frida slowly narrowed her eyes. Her husband, who always worries about little things, called her earlier, woke her up, and no matter how hard she tried, she could no longer sleep. She looked lazily at the man snoring next to her. Saliva flowed from his open mouth like drops from a leaky faucet. She saw his fillings and the light-colored crowns on several of his molars. He had earwax. At least hair didn't grow there, not like the last one. That last one, like the first one, started well, even better than expected. The intensity of it, the excitement, the secret meetings, the insidiousness of it all, the private messages full of promise, the hot sex, and then the disappointment, always the disappointment. These things, this was her third, they're pure stupidity. 3 times, maybe this one is the one, but what is this one for? And then there was boredom, meaningless little things, all this, not to mention the wine. Wine, oh brother, it was a joke. Did she ever feel guilty? Why did she do this? Why did you risk it? Was it fun? Exciting? Dangerous? No, the men weren't funny. They were boring. It was all so banal. Why did she do this? Did she even care? Why go out and risk everything for cheap sex when she had a reliable person at home? Garrett, her husband, was her trusted man. Why did she choose him? Why did you marry him? Why has this always proven to be such a difficult question? Why did she even care? She didn't care. No, it was not. Did she care? She knew she had to. Garrett was always kind to her. Frida looked at the man next to her. This one is interesting, maybe the same age as her husband. This one had the whitest, brightest front teeth. She was sure he used one of those cleaners or most likely had it done at the dentist. He was prettier than Garrett, not that it mattered. Well, okay. Dr. Roland Menesky, that was his name. He was a resident physician at one of the major hospitals in the city. He was married and had one child, a boy. He showed her some photographs. He had a beautiful boy and a beautiful wife. Like she cared what they looked like, or when he said they were vacationing in Florida. She thought one lie was as good as another. Eventually, she told Garrett that her workshop could last all week. Of course, Garrett believed her. He believed everything she said. Garrett trusted her. She trusted him too. Garrett was her main man. Menesky was not at all like her husband. Oh, they were the same age, but that was where the similarities ended. Menesky was a giant, tall maybe 6 feet 6 in. He was big, muscular, no, he was pumped up, like the guy who turns into lard too quickly. Her husband was skinny, not weak skinny, just skinny. He was a carpenter. Garrett was a small man, no, not short, just small, with small hands like a girl, small legs and thin legs, almost no hips, nothing in common with the big men who worked with him and for him. She believed that real men were supposed to have that masculine appearance, a narrow waist and broad shoulders, that big V shape that she liked to look at. Not Garrett. He was skinny from top to bottom, no ass, no pecs, no shoulders, nothing. She often wondered why she married him. Garrett was handsome. Give him breasts, and he could become a wonderful girl. Well, for sex, that was a different matter. She argued that she could make him dress like a woman. They could put a dress on him, and she could make him go to some distant city where she could show him off as her friend. He wouldn't like it, but he would do it. He did everything she said. It was because he loved her. The men were all thinking with their crotches. Garrett didn't think. Garrett lived in a fantasy world. All he dreamed about was her and the children, but mostly her. He idolized her. Any woman would be glad to have a man like him. Why was she here with this? She looked back at her doctor. The meniscus was more muscular, but not rigid. She realized this the first time they were together. Menisci with clothes looked like Adonis, but without clothes he looked completely different. Good shape, good figure, but soft, somehow relaxed. If that was all she wanted, she would be home right now. What did she want? She didn't know, couldn't say, but she wanted something. Why was she so unhappy? She couldn't remember when she had been truly happy. No, that's not true. There were times. Sometimes Garrett made her happy. In any case, he always tried. She has been with other men since she got married. The doctor was her third. 3 men in the few years since Jesse was born. They never lasted long, 3, maybe 4 meetings, and that's it. She will give the doctor another chance. Of the 3, he was the youngest. The other 2 were in their 50s. The first is a lawyer, the second is a college teacher, not even a professor. There was a man out there somewhere, a real man. Once there was one, but no, that's not true. The doctor turned it over. He was waking up. Yes, another chance for him. That's all. What a waste of time. All 3 were a waste of time. Why did she even do this? She had a man, a good one too. He adored her. Why did she do this? Of course she had reasons. Reasons. Fake reasons. Did she really know why? The doctor opened his eyes. How was I? Magnificent, I bet. Better than your little guy back home. She started to have a headache and frowned. Let's leave the family aside. You were fine. Do you want more right now? Frida winced. Not in this life. She stood up. I have to go. Humor forgotten, he looked at his watch. Damn, it's late. Let me accompany you. We will meet in a few days. Frieda thought about her Aunt Ginger, her mother's sister. She died of cancer. Ginger was her favorite person. Yes, she did love someone. She loved Ginger. She remembered the funeral, the farewell. Ginger looked so beautiful lying in her red coffin. Frieda was jealous of her. Ginger was at peace. She thought about her often. She always brought fresh flowers to her grave. To be like Ginger. To be at peace. Ginger died in January 2011 and Frieda missed her dearly. Pulling on her panties, she looked at the whale next to her. You'll want more, I know. Write to me. Hurry up. I don't like where I left my car. The night before, Frieda's husband, Garrett, had been moaning. Tired and fresh from my shower, I was ready to lie down and call it a day. My brother and I worked 12 hard hours finishing the roof of the house. Man, I was exhausted. I looked at my watch. It's almost 7 p.m. on March 3rd, one of the short and decidedly cold days of the year. I felt disgusted, but with the house under a roof, we could really start working. I took 4 more ibuprofen and collapsed on the bed, exhausted. I'm coughing again. I couldn't get rid of this cold. Lay there, half awake, half asleep. I heard the children and dear old mother-in-law. The next thing I heard was a siren blaring from the fire station. I rolled over. Damn, it was 4 a.m. Crap. Forrest, my little brother who lived with us after our mom died, ran into the room. Garrett, did you hear? Yawning, yeah, we better go. Forrest and I were volunteer firefighters. I fumbled around, found my work boots, and started putting them on. Oh God, how I ached all over. Forrest stood impatiently. Come on, brother. Together, we got to my pickup truck and rushed to the fire station. The fire truck was just getting ready to leave when we got there. We found our equipment and climbed onto it. The trip was short. It turned out that old man Jensen's barn, probably overloaded with too much garbage, had caught fire. Using water from Jensen's pond, they quickly got the situation under control and headed back to the station. Forrest, our friend Barney Robinson, and I riding together side by side. I felt so bad that I could barely hold on. As we turned the corner, we passed several poorly built mansions between Halston Mill and School Roads. Barney leaned towards me, pointing to something in the woods near one of the lots. Isn't that Frieda's car? Being very early, barely 6 a.m., the sky was just starting to lighten, but I still recognized her dark red Jeep Cherokee. I recognized it because there was a unique bright red luminescent sticker on the back window that said, "Change the world." I looked at Barney, then at Forrest, but didn't say anything. What could I say? My wife was supposed to be 60 miles away at some charity event in another city. Frieda, my wife of 15 years, was a local activist. Thanks to her father's connections, she was involved in all possible charitable organizations. She had her own money from a trust fund set up by her late aunt, which allowed her to do whatever she wanted, including buying 2 cars, a red Jeep, and a brand new black Lexus. Since my income covered all the bills, everything else that mattered was in my name. She was supposed to be in Lancaster for some seminar the last few days. I remembered this because she said she was looking forward to the trip. Now, why was her car in the forest? I looked at Forrest and he muttered, "This is Frieda's car. What is she doing there?" It was the middle of the week and she wasn't due home until the end of the day. What could I say? Not much. I looked back at the road to the houses. "I'll handle it." Both Forrest and Barney turned away. Once we got back to the fire station, Forrest said he'd be staying a while longer, so I took my pickup, an old black, heavily dented and rusted Chevy Suburban, got back in it, and drove off. I kept thinking. I kept trying to make excuses for why I was afraid of what was happening. Frieda has been acting strange lately, stranger than usual. Her trips and time spent away from home seemed more confusing. She was always here and there, but lately things seemed even stranger. She never talked much, but in the last few weeks she had been even less talkative, and a couple of times in the last few weeks she had found an excuse to sleep downstairs instead of going up to bed. This bothered me. This has happened before. Our romantic life. Well, she was good around Christmas, but has gotten worse since then. I worked hard. I tried to be a good husband, a good father. I knew I wasn't Ryan Gosling, but I tried to make her happy. I loved her very much. I enjoyed the children. In her younger days, not that long ago actually, she liked to cuddle. Hugging is a funny word, a strange word. I watched TV, not a lot, but a little. When lovers hugged on TV, they talked and giggled and stuff. When Frieda and I hugged, it seemed like I was doing all the hugging, and she was sighing and mumbling a lot, not touching much, however. Sometimes she cried, not a lot of loud sobs, just some quiet crying. This bothered me. I knew she loved me, I just didn't know why she was crying. When I asked her, she said it was nothing. I can't say exactly when the hugs stopped, maybe in January, but they almost dried up by the Super Bowl. About sex, she always said that she liked sex in any form. In the last few weeks, I felt when we were together that she did it as if she was fulfilling a duty, just doing it to get it done. I could always tell when she was imitating. I reached a row of houses. There were 6 of them, all new, all cheaply made, all with large garages. Her car was still parked in the forest on the opposite side of the road. It was a mystery why she parked it there. What am I going to do with this now? I did not know. I sat in my car and looked at her car. Crap. We've been married for 15 years. Lauren, our oldest, was our little love child. I was in college, and Frieda had just graduated, 3rd in her class of 200. It was one of those after prom parties, a long night of partying followed by several days at the beach. We were young and in love, at least I was. We didn't even think about defense. Towards the end of the summer, as she prepared to attend Cornell, morning sickness began. Getting rid of the pregnancy was out of the question, so we got married. I dropped out of school and went to work with my father, and with the help of my older brother, I mastered the profession and have been building houses ever since. Lauren is born. Frieda began her studies at a local college and then at a state university. She never got into Cornell, but she graduated. During the time we spent together, we had 2 more children. We had a nice house, an old farmhouse on 12 acres of land. We had a normal household, horses, chickens, a couple of dogs. The girls, like their brother, joined FFA and 4-H, each with their own sheep. I knew Frieda was disappointed with Cornell. She missed her big chance. God, I put up with this for years. Her parents never let me forget about it. Her parents were quite distant, at least towards me. I tried, honestly, I tried. I knew she was out of my league when we got married. I think she started dating me that spring because her steady boyfriend left her. But even though I knew I was just a consolation prize, I loved her like crazy. From then on, I did my best. I swore that although I always knew she felt left out, she never wanted for anything. I did the best I could, and man, I always really cared about her. I've heard that some women leave because they feel forgotten, but I never neglected Frieda. Of course, there was work, and there was always not enough money, but I always tried. I always tried to live up to what I thought she wanted. It was definitely her car. What should I do now? I was sitting in his truck and considered his options. I think I could wait until Frieda and her satellite come out and make a big fuss, maybe even start a fight, or I could open her car and disable it. I had the key, I could do it. I could pretend I never saw her car, but Forrest and Barney already knew. I think Barney has already told his wife. Damn, by the evening everyone will know. I needed to find out who she was with. Was this person married? Did I know him? I needed to know if this was her first time. Has she cheated on me before? I had my suspicions. Crap, is she cheating on me now? I needed to talk to my brother. Figuratively speaking, I was tearing my hair out. Taking out my cell phone, I dialed Forrest's number. He answered immediately. While waiting, he guessed, "Hello, Forrest?" "Yes, it's me." "Don't tell anyone what we saw this morning. I need to decide what to do. Okay?" I heard, or thought I heard, a disappointed sigh. "Yes, of course." "And call Stephen. Tell him I might not be able to come today, but don't say why, and call Barney and tell him to keep quiet." Stephen was my other brother. He never loved Frida. He said that she always acted as if she was better than everyone else. God, I knew Barney had already told his wife. Closing the phone, I drove back into the forest and waited. There was Forrest. He wanted to go to college. He had his own plans, get his basic education, and then go to Virginia Tech. Then there was my son Jesse, Katie, our oldest daughter, and Lauren, our oldest. How will this affect them? Frida was their mother. I couldn't just... Hell, I didn't even know for sure. What if she drove to Lancaster with some coworker and left her car at that person's house? It made sense. Okay, I checked the street. Cars were scattered everywhere, but with garages, who knows? The current charity has brought in a new guy, a finance manager. I knew him vaguely, a quiet guy, married, inconspicuous, with thinning hair, a little overweight, but I think he went to the gym. What if they went to Lancaster together? If it's him, everything might be fine. I decided to wait. It could be anyone, anything. It was barely 5 a.m. If she was in Lancaster, the checkout would probably be at 11 a.m. The journey from there to our house takes almost 2 hours, so she could stay with whoever took her in until noon. What if she's really there and I'm just wrong to suspect? So what should I do? Wait? No, I had a better idea. The sun is almost up. If she's in Lancaster, she'll probably be up soon. Why not call? I took out my mobile phone and dialed her pre-recorded number. It rang twice. She answered the third call. I heard her voice. "Hello? Crap, Garrett, what do you want?" I stupidly replied, "You are my wife. I woke up and got worried. I had a bad dream. Are you okay? Are you still in Lancaster?" She replied sharply, "Yes, still in Lancaster. Listen, it's very early. I need to sleep. I'll see you when I get home, or when you get home." "Okay." I replied, "Yes, of course." I hung up. I decided to wait right where I was. Maybe she really is in Lancaster. Oh no. A little after 11 o'clock, Frida left the fourth house. She looked fresh and clean. Of course, she was followed by a man wearing only pajama pants. It was not the one I suspected. He walked her across the road to her car. They talked for a bit. They held hands. At the last moment, he leaned in for a kiss, but she leaned away, so it ended with a kiss on the cheek. As if it mattered. I watched as she blew him a kiss, then got into the car. He watched her drive away and then returned to the house. Frida started the car and, turning left, drove out onto the road. She drove right past where I was parked. If she had looked, she would have seen me. I saw her quite clearly. She had the radio on. I heard him. She hummed and tapped the top of the dashboard. She looked happy. No, she looked excited. I pulled out and drove east in the opposite direction. I didn't go far. I had a headache. I was aching all over. When Katie felt sick, she said she felt fragile. That's how I felt. I didn't eat anything, but I felt like I was going to be sick, so I stopped, went out, and sat down on the grass. It didn't work out, but I sat there for a while anyway. I felt terrible. Was it because I was sick, or because I saw? It was such a beautiful morning. The sun was shining. The birds were chirping. An old lazy vulture was circling something nearby, probably dead deer. Bright white clouds, like winged marshmallows, floated across the late winter sky. Winter is not my favorite season, but there was something mystical about the morning, as if something was dying and no one knew or cared. It seemed like the world. All the more I was moving, all the parts were in place, but I was trapped. Frida always said that she liked autumn best, sunny, but not so hot and humid. Everything around was so clear and clean, big beautiful trees, mostly oaks, but a few maples, ash trees, willows, and a few dogwoods. We had a big maple tree in our backyard, still with the swing I made for the girls. I used to pump them. And now, I got to thinking. I started to tremble. I was sweating. I was so weak, as if someone had just sucked all the blood out of my body. What did Frida do? Why was she dating another man? It was a big house, at least $500,000. He must be rich. What did I do wrong? I couldn't help myself. I started crying. My wife, my dream, my life, my heart, our life, children, our home. I have never felt so bad, not even when my mother died. What will I do? I needed to move, keep moving. It was difficult to breathe. I stopped at a local cafe and ordered eggs and sausage, but I couldn't eat anything. Didn't even touch the coffee. It was only after 13 o'clock that I returned home. Frida was there. I passed by her car and examined it. I wanted to punch the side window. When I walked inside, she was in the laundry room, sorting her clothes. My stomach started churning again. I felt dizzy, like I had a brain tumor. Was I dying? I needed to get myself together. I asked, "When did you come back?" Frida replied, "About an hour ago. Why are you not at work?" I was so weak that I leaned my hands on the dryer. I was covered in sweat. I leaned towards her. She pulled away. I lied. I needed to go to our supplier. They were having problems with the rafters for our next order. I had everything sorted out, so I decided to stop by before heading back to work. "How are you traveling?" She was busy stuffing clothes into the washing machine. She didn't look at me. She didn't want to look at me. In my mind, in my heart, I screamed, "Look at me, see me, tell me I'm wrong, tell me you didn't do anything." Shaking out her blouse, she replied, "No incident. Mom left a message. Jerry will bring Mary and the children from San Diego for Easter. They want us to join them." I walked past her. Of course, I guess. I saw what she was washing. It was her underwear. "Is this new?" I asked. She tossed the panties she was holding into the washing machine. "No, the usual," then turned. "That was stupid this morning." "What, I called you? I had a nightmare. He woke me up. It was about you. I was worried." Still not looking at me, she continued fiddling with her things. "I hope it's nothing serious." "Frida," I asked, "do you love me?" She stopped for a moment, looked at her underwear, and then looked at me with annoyance. "Okay, what's the problem?" "I'm just asking, that's all. Do you love me?" She didn't look at me. "I married you, didn't I?" I shrugged. "Yeah, but you know. Well, Lauren." She threw something else into the washing machine, threw it out forcefully. "Go back to work, Garrett." I went upstairs. I needed to think about something else. So Jerry and his family come from San Diego. Jerry and Mary were quite nice. Jerry was Frida's older brother. He studied at the University of Pennsylvania and then received his MBA there. He married his college sweetheart and moved to California, where he found success in everything he tried, especially in the healthcare industry. They were rich. He sent me plans for his house before signing contracts. I looked them up. Man, this was a dream house. Oceanfront, saltwater pool, hot tub, golf course, home theater, two-lane bowling alley, everything. I made several suggestions, and he accepted them. He offered to pay me, but I refused. I thought it was a little inappropriate. They had two girls, Monica and Leslie, both much younger than ours. They planned ahead, saved money, and waited before having children. We had 3 children. Lauren, our oldest, is a 14-year-old high school student. Then there was Katie, a 7th grader, and finally Jesse, our boy from the 4th class. Jerry was a good guy, A lot of money, friendly, generous to a fault. A couple of years ago, he invited us all to his place. Frida and the children went, but I stayed. Jerry even offered to pay for my ticket, but I couldn't afford it. The local housing market was weak, and we were over-leveraged. Mom and Dad died, Forrest moved in with us and needed to finish school, and my brother and I took any job to stay afloat. Frida and the kids went and had a great time. The kids emailed photos. Upstairs, I took a shower and changed clothes. I had to go to work. I stopped sweating, but I was flushed and felt hot and dry. Felt so weak and fragile. When I went down and went into the kitchen, Frida was sitting at the table and reading something on his mobile. I wondered what it could be. I thought about going in and telling her what I saw, but I didn't. I was too scared. What if she leaves me? I almost cried. I almost cried right there. If she leaves me, I don't know what I'll do. I was so scared. All day I tried to keep thoughts of my wife out of my head, working until I was exhausted. Around 3 o'clock, I told my brother that I needed to leave. He suspected something, so he simply waved his hand. Returning home, I found Frida on her laptop. Between bouts of sneezing and coughing, I tried to be cheerful. I asked, "Anything interesting?" She closed it. "Just regular shit." Still trying to smile, I croaked, "Where are the children?" She looked irritated. I felt like I was on the losing side. My legs felt like trees. My arms were so heavy that I could barely lift them. She barked at me. "The girls are in their rooms, texting their friends, I think. I didn't see Jessie." I wanted to run away, but I went upstairs to accept more than one shower. The insulation itched. Upstairs, I called Forrest. "Where are you?" "On the street," was his answer. "When are you going to come back home?" "Never unless you have to." I asked, "Have you seen Jesse?" "He's hanging out with friends." He hung up. What we saw worried Forrest. Did he tell any of my children? God, I hope not. I dialed Forrest's number again. I knew he needed me. I caught him on the second ring. "Forrest, where are you?" "With friends." "When are you going to come back home?" "Not now. Maybe not today. Maybe never. I don't know." It was annoying. "Look, Forrest, you can't do this. Come back home." "For what?" he replied. "To watch you pretend to be happily married." "No, because this is your home." Frida entered the bedroom and headed to our bathroom. I lowered my voice. "Go back home. We will talk." "Why would you show me how a cuckold leads himself next to a cheating woman of easy virtue?" he shouted. "Just come home." He didn't answer, but I knew he'd be back soon, and a few minutes later, he actually arrived. I met him at the door. "Let's go to the porch." He brushed past me as I went to the refrigerator and pulled out 2 cans of PBR. The way I was feeling, I thought, this is what I need. I met him on the porch, but not before Frida intercepted me. "I don't like you giving him beer." I didn't know where it came from, so I said, "I'm going to have a beer with my brother, okay?" Then I just looked at her and walked out, letting the door slam behind me. It was nice. Together with Forrest, we sat down. "Forrest, until I figure this out, I want you to exercise self-control." He was angry. "What are you going to do? Please her every time she comes in late." I could handle this. I looked at him. "How would you like it if I knocked you down?" He backed off. Okay, I just don't like what she does." I looked back. The kitchen window was open. "Let's go to the barn." We walked together the 40 steps or so that separated the house from where we kept the lawnmower. "Forrest, I'm worried about my daughters and Jessie, so I want you to act like nothing is happening. Can you do this? She's cheating on you, Garrett." "I know that, but I'm not going to act rashly. Just stay calm until I tell you to stop." "How long will it be?" "I won't wait forever." Forrest was like me. If he sees a problem, he immediately takes on it. I told him, "I need to find out who this other cheater is. I saw him this morning, but I don't know anything about him. After I deal with him, I'll take care of your aunt." "Are you going to leave her?" This was the worst question. I replied, "It's hard to say. I need to check our finances. Maybe instead of finishing college, you should go straight to Virginia Tech. Then you would have left home." "What about Jessie and the girls?" "Don't know. She's their mother." "Do you want me to tell them?" I turned to him. "I don't want you to do the damn thing." He raised his hands. "Okay, sorry." "Let's go." I took his hand, and we walked back to the house. Frida was watching from the kitchen window, so I left Forrest and went into the field behind the barn where the horses were. Katie had to feed them. I used this as an excuse to stay away for a while. I needed to think. Frida was a good girl, and when we were younger, I thought she was a pretty good wife and mother. But in the last few years, I thought she was showing signs of dissatisfaction, and lately, I didn't know. I thought that she always saw me as this lovable bumpkin, some kind of country boy or hillbilly who needed to be controlled. It made life easier, so I let her. I may not have finished college, but I wasn't stupid. I knew that her parents had a low opinion of me. I knew her mom was terribly disappointed that she married me, but I knew a lot of things. In fact, in many ways, Frida was aimless. She had a cell phone, her personal laptop, and a desktop computer for her charities. Plus, she had a Jeep and another fairly new car with built-in GPS. In short, all the tools. I needed to find out who my enemy was, if he even existed. I kind of decided. I needed my family's respect. I was going to do something. Frida had a small office that I built for her next to the main house. She carried out her charitable work there without worry. It was there that she kept many of her personal belongings. She had a lot of clothes and personal files there. One thing she didn't have was a landline phone. Of course, she had a mobile phone. I felt so bad. I slowly walked to my tiny office, which was next to the living room, and plopped down in the old chair I bought many years ago. I left the door open. I could see the kitchen and dining room from where I was sitting, and then something happened. As I said earlier, Frieda did not have a landline in her office. While she was preparing dinner, something spicy I knew I couldn't eat, the kitchen phone rang. Frida picked up the phone. She talked and rambled on and on for a few seconds, but then the person on the other end of the line said something she didn't like because her mood suddenly changed. Almost immediately, she started looking in my direction. I wondered, did Barney say something to his wife Mildred and Mildred called Frieda? I pretended to be dozing, but watched. When Frida was nervous about something, she began to shake her right leg. That right leg was shaking. She continued to touch the top of her blouse with her right hand. While playing with those top buttons, she kept looking from her phone to the kitchen clock and then to me. I pretended that my eyes were closed. Soon I heard, or thought I heard, Frida put the phone back in its place. I heard some more noise in the kitchen. Vaguely, I saw Frida walk through the kitchen and dining room. She should be at my office door. Garrett, Garrett? Was this the moment? Was this the moment when she would tell me we were done? I opened my eyes. Yes? She looked nervous, scared. Are you, going to be able to eat something? I cooked pasta, but I have frozen vegetable soup. I can heat it up. She was really nervous. Even worse, she looked at me as if she wanted to say something. I prayed, no, don't say that. Don't tell me we're done. I replied, the soup will be great. She walked into my office. Why don't you go to bed? I'll bring it when it's ready. I replied, are you sure? She walked over to where I was sitting. She reached out and almost touched me, but in typical Frida fashion, she pulled back at the last moment. Yes, you go to bed. I'll bring it. I got up from my chair. I was so lethargic and exhausted that I almost fell forward. Frida retreated. I said, okay, honey. She turned and walked back to the kitchen while I slowly walked up the steps to our bedroom. I knew other men were treated differently. Barney's wife, Mildred, did everything except put on a nurse's outfit when he was sick. Barney worked at a large sawmill outside of town. His wife took care of him like a mother hen. Then there was Rankin Loudermilk. His wife, Patty, was truly special. Rankin had a heart problem that prevented him from lifting a liter of milk. This Patty was a truly caring wife. Not Frida, however. Frida was cold. I never thought she was evil, just indifferent. In fact, she treated the children much the same way as she treated me. Unlike Frida, I have always loved reading fiction. Frida didn't think about it. She also read a lot, but her materials were more about the suffering of other people. I think it had to do with her charity as much as anything else. I loved literature. By the time I left school, I had read almost all of Dickens I could find, and later, after our marriage, I had read almost all of Steinbeck and Hemingway. Lately, I've picked up all 5 of Fitzgerald's novels. Frida laughed. She said that I would never read them. Of course, she was wrong. I loved my wife. I don't remember ever not liking her, but if I were to place her in the Greek pantheon, I think she would be Minerva, the Diana of the Romans. She was what was called a huntress, beautiful, graceful, and elegant, but cold. Frida was my Minerva, always there, but also always somewhere else. Damn, I'm a hunter. We're all hunters. Believe it or not, Frida hunts deer with a bow. God, watching her practice in the yard is truly like watching Minerva. With the exception of a short time on our honeymoon, and maybe a little after, she was, I would say, part of me and the family, but always in some other place too. It was like she was always yearning for something. I think this bothered me in the years before Jessie was born. After Jessie, not so much. I think that's when I started to notice. I can't think about it, and I can't cry. I'm sick enough as it is. About Frida. I thought a lot about this, about her. Frida even looked like Minerva. She is tall, 5 feet 8 inches. She is slender, with long legs, long graceful arms, and long but delicately slender arms and fingers. When she gets her nails done, she only uses clear polish. When she gets ready to go out, she always looks beautiful, but inaccessible. Trust me, she is incredible. She doesn't wear a t-shirt, just blouses, neat, tailored blouses, yellow, white, and blue, which all cost a fortune, and pants, and miniskirts. Miniskirts that sway and swirl as she walks, and dresses, long, almost to the knees, dark dresses, blue or black. There were other things too. She has small breasts, not flat, but small, no, more like small. I mean, she's over 30, and there's no sign of sagging. Why am I torturing myself like this? I love her so much. I just know that she's leaving me, but oh God. I love making love to her. I've always loved it. She's too perfect. I don't feel humiliated doing this for her. I like it. Soon after I went to bed, Frieda brought soup. She placed it on my bedside table with a spoon and napkin and left. She didn't even check my temperature. She didn't say anything. The soup was only warm. I'm used to it. I know that she loves me, or at least she once loved me. Later that night, I got up. I found her phone and activated the app that allowed me to see her messages. I set it up so that all messages are forwarded to my desktop and laptop. The GPS on her Lexus automatically turns on every time she starts the engine, so I won't have any problems finding her. The next morning, I went to work as usual, or at least I tried to. I still had a fever, and it felt high. However, by lunchtime, I was ready to see what was there. Wow, she was as busy as a bee. Although it was difficult to decipher their messages, everything turned out to be too easy. Supposedly, Frida called herself F, and her lover called himself L. So it was Frida and L, someone who lived in a big house on Frederick's Schoolhouse Road. She sent something I didn't understand, something like THKIN OUF, and he replied M2U. Was that code for I'm thinking about you, and then me too? Anyway, her second message is C day, to which he replied W and W. Maybe it meant see you today, and then when and where. Oh no, I thought, maybe this is it. She then sent important, saying goodbye. Wow, was my reaction. She told him they were breaking up. Then it dawned on me. Someone called last night, maybe Mildred, and they told her I saw her car. This could mean that Frieda was afraid that I knew something, and that's why she rejected the L. He replied, no. She immediately responded, Denny's, Dual Highway, Hagerstown, 2 p.m. His response, see you, Ilu. The situation was obvious. She wanted to finish what they were doing. He didn't want to, and Ilu meant, I love you. Well, I knew where Denny's was, and I had plenty of time to get there. I closed my laptop, got out of the truck, found my brother, and told him I needed to leave for the rest of the day. He told me I looked like crap and not to take crap from anyone. Then I was sure that Forrest had told him something. I looked at my watch, 12:30. It took me an hour to get there, so I did the best I could. I retied my boots, took 3 more Advils, got in the truck, and drove off. It was a cold, crisp day. The temperature gauge on my phone read 28 degrees, and judging by the way my truck was holding on the road, it was more than a little windy. Why, I asked myself, did it have to be today? Oh, the wind and weather were bad, but I had to meet my wife and her lover with the worst cold I've had in years. I wish I had remembered to get a flu shot in the fall. Hell, I made Frieda, Forrest, and the kids all make one. I didn't even know who L was. He could be some kind of karate expert or boxer, or worse, some rich professional. Luckily for me, Frieda contacted some doctor or lawyer. She moved in such circles. I knew it. Oh, damn, I knew it. I might have been sick, but I remembered. Could I remember? Oh, yes, what was happening now was like the chickens coming home. I loved my wife. I wanted to keep it. I didn't care if she was unfaithful. I had to keep it. She was everything to me. Did I make a mistake? Yes, maybe. Frieda married me because she was pregnant. I got her pregnant on the night of her graduation when she was already of age, but still very young for this. I wanted her to get pregnant. If she got pregnant, she would need someone, she would need me. So we got married, went to Niagara Falls, came home, and built a life. Lauren, our first, showed up on time. Oh God, she was wonderful. We were in a hurry. It was just quick. 9 months later, Katie arrived, but that was okay. Katie made us the perfect family. Mom, Dad, and 2 cute kids, but I wanted a son. Frieda said no. 2 is enough, but I wanted a little boy. I persuaded, begged, but Frieda was adamant. It didn't matter. Protection against pregnancy is not always ideal, and Frieda became pregnant again. She was furious. She blamed me for damaging her device. She said she hated me, that she would never forgive me. Honestly, I didn't do anything but get my little boy. We named him Jesse. For some reason, Frieda's 3rd birth created a small additional problem. When we returned home, Frieda said that the doctor did not stop, but cut her tubes. Either way, Jesse will be her last. From the very beginning, she made it clear that Jesse was my baby. Oh, she loves me. She cares about me, but still, ever since I get too close, well, after Jesse, our intimate life changed. She was always cool. But after Jesse, I started doing everything. It became a routine. First of all, she never initiates anything. It was always me, and when I did it, I had to follow a pretty precise pattern. She has long blonde hair. They are thin and straight and stunning. Her eyes are blue, ice blue, almost transparent. They are so light and widely spaced, and with thin but incredibly sexy eyebrows. Why did she even agree to marry me? She could have anyone. Yes, she has Nordic features like her mom and dad, high but well-defined cheekbones, and a pale, ultra-pale complexion. Her lips are small and heart-shaped. Never, not once since Jessie was born, have I heard a single word of warmth and intimacy in bed. Frieda was firmly of the opinion that I had used her cruelly, and it was her right, no, it was her duty to punish me. Our nightly relationship was only about Frieda all the time, but I continued to hope. So I was at Denny's waiting for my wife and her lover to arrive, afraid that this was all something she was doing to punish me, and I was completely sick. Why did I put up with this? I know why. I have my daughters and I have my son, and I really believe that Frieda still loves me. I believe that one day she will wake up, come to terms with what she did, realize that she is truly loved, and that she herself is in love, that no one used or abused her, and on that day, like the Sleeping Beauty, her prince, then there I am, will be next to her. It was 2:05 when Frieda arrived. I did not notice. She parked next to a steel gray Mercedes that looked new. She went out. The man got out of the Mercedes. Oh no, Roland Menesky, Dr. Roland Menesky, a highly professional pediatrician and occasional doctor for our children, is friendly, smooth, witty, a huge boring man, and married. Where did the L come from? Of course, lover. Frida went to the doctor. She smiled, a real smile. God, I would give $1 million for a smile like that. He smiled at her too. I coughed, wiped my eyes, and then my nose. I opened my truck door and climbed down. I almost fell. God, something is wrong, and not just the flu. They were hand in hand, walking towards the front door. I shouted, Frida. She turned around. She saw me. He saw me too. Frida just stood there. She didn't say anything. Like a stone, she just stood there. She looked well empty, like a zombie. I came closer. Frida, I know. Menisci stepped forward. He came between me and my wife. I didn't care about him. We were standing in an open space between two parked cars. Tired, dizzy, with a headache, wanting to get to my wife, I weakly placed my hand on his chest. Please. He hit me. I was in the hospital. I knew it was a hospital because I recognized the surroundings. Bright lights, buzzing and ringing, other hospital noises, the whistling of clinically clean air and the cold. I heard someone say, he's coming to his senses. Another voice, a man's voice. Brother, you've been really bothered. We thought. My head was pounding. It felt like there were stones or something like that in it. I asked, where is my wife? From the shadows I heard her. I'm here, dear. The sound of her voice, although quiet, rang in my head like a hammer. Darling, I thought, this must be for effect. What's happened? I asked. Dr. Menesky thought you were going to hit him, so he hit him first. Then I don't know. He followed you, so I pushed him into the road. There was a car. He got hit. I couldn't see her well. Everything was blurry. Hoping, I asked, is he dead? No, she replied, but he is injured. He is in the next room. My answer, oh. Frieda asked, Garrett, can you see me? Everything is so bright, it's like you're in a fog. My head hurts. Every noise. She replied, I thought so. You don't seem to be focusing. Oh, my tired head, my tired life. Frieda, I know. God, she took my hand. Yes, I know you do. Someone came in. Maybe an orderly or a nurse, I couldn't tell. It was a woman. What's your name? I answered, Garrett. How old are you? 35. Then she said, we'll take you to the MRI. Your wife took care of everything. Frieda asked, can I go too? The woman replied, you can follow us, but you will have to wait outside. I started to see a little better. The nurse looked young, like a child. Frieda didn't look very well, maybe tired. We moved quite slowly. Suddenly, I realized that we were passing another open ward. There was a man sitting on the bed. His curtain was open as we walked past. He saw me. He saw us. He started shouting, hey, porter, I slept with your wife. I looked at Frieda. She was red like never before. I asked, does he have children? We were already out of sight of the doctor when she whispered, 2, I think. I shouted back, I slept with your wife. Your children are mine. What do you think about this? We all heard him scream, I'll kill you, you damn son of a bitch. I'll kill you. Some orderly or someone else whispered to us, he's heavily medicated, plus he has a concussion. Don't pay any attention. Through the pain, I needed to say something else, so I shouted back, don't count on alimony, you useless asshole. Your wife begged me for it. Said you were too helpless to do it. I heard his curtain being closed. The lover didn't answer, so the nurses probably gave him something. One of the doctors on duty came over and started touching me, so that I started moaning and grunting. Isn't that what sick people do? I saw Frieda biting her nails. The doctor said, we'll do an MRI, maybe a few more tests. Looks like a concussion. Ankle problem. Looks like there's some ligament damage. Can you see me? They started moving me again. I heard Frida, "Take care of him." That was the last thing I remembered. Frida thought. She didn't know what to do. One of the doctors was talking to Garrett. "It looks like you have a concussion, plus a serious ankle sprain. There may be some ligament damage. We'll send you for an X-ray. You'll be down for a while." He looked at the paperwork. "Mr. Hamilton." Garrett moaned, "This is wonderful." Then he looked at me and frowned. But he didn't say anything, and I was glad. A few minutes later, 2 nurses arrived. They helped Garrett out of bed and moved him to another gurney. One looked at me and smiled. "We won't be long." When they took Garrett out, he looked at my mom and said, "That man, he was right, you know." My mother's face turned white. When Garrett left, she looked at me. "Forrest told me he and Garrett and some firefighters saw your car parked in front of some house when you were supposed to be in Lancaster." Was Forrest with him? They were returning from the fire. She vaguely remembered hearing the fire station siren, so Forrest and Garrett saw her car. Frieda looked at her mother and shrugged. "Well, well." She said, "Is that all you can say?" Frieda couldn't look at her. "I came back early. Well, actually, I never left. I spent the entire last day with Dr. Menesky. He bought Dr. Chambers' old practice and works here on staff. He also bought one of the new houses on Frederick's Schoolhouse Road." Her mother put her hand to her mouth. "Were you with another man?" "Don't make a big deal out of it, Mom. People do this all the time. I just got caught. That's all." Her mom didn't say anything. She simply turned away and then left. For 15 years, Frida and I worked hard and shared the good with the bad, but there were other times when I thought Frida was floating away. She did so well in school. She was special. All her teachers said so. I was a little older and wasn't the best student at school. I think I was a more reliable, resilient guy. I'm not bragging, believe me, I never brag, but everyone remembers the quarterback or the great receiver. But how many people remember the very average defender who was sometimes called upon to take a punt and make a fair catch? Not many, unless the clown dropped it, and I dropped 1 or 2. They didn't happen often, but Frida had days like this. She saw an old friend, and they got together and talked about old times and told each other what they were doing. I knew it bothered her when she heard about the average student who became the first female lawyer at a city law firm, or the girl who went off to college and married a rich pediatrician. She never complained, but I saw it in her eyes. I just wished there was something more I could do. Changes in the economy didn't help either. When my father died, Stephen and I became fully involved in the business. People were moving out of Washington, and the housing market was good. We both mortgaged our property and invested everything we had. We bought plots and dug wells. Then 2008 came and everything fell apart. 6 years later, and we're still trying to get out. For a long time, everything was on the edge. There was something else. I thought that Frida's parents had always been attentive and loving towards our children, but when my older brother's children appeared, it seemed that ours became second best. It wasn't big things, but there were always those little niggles. I always explained this by distance. I think my kids, especially my girls, noticed that. It's funny, my older brother's kids adored my kids, but my grandparents and me, not so much. Maybe it was me. In general, I never lived up to it. I did everything I could. The children never lacked for anything. Hell, Frida didn't need anything either. No, there were no trips to Europe. There was only one cruise, and Bar Harbor, although beautiful, was not Hawaii. I used to love her. I've always loved her. It breaks my heart. I wish I was smarter or more cunning, but all I ever had were my hands. Doctors decided that because of the possibility of something more serious, they would keep Garrett overnight. This gave Frieda time to return home and talk to the children. She needed to come up with a story, plus Garrett would need some things. What will she say? She understood that it was impossible to avoid mentioning Dr. Meniscus. If his wife returns home and finds out something, there will be some kind of scandal. Children will be asked questions. When she returned home, the children were there, waiting. Mom followed her from the hospital. Dad was at her house. Opening the front door of their home, she saw 4 pairs of wide eyes, their children and their father. Forrest was there, but he already knew. Lauren spoke first. "Where's Daddy?" Frieda took a deep breath and said, "Daddy's in the hospital." She saw the worry. "He's fine. He'll be home tomorrow." The more persistent Katie asked, "What happened?" Frieda looked at Forrest, pleading for his cooperation. "Dad had an argument with someone in the parking lot. I think I parked too close to another car. Then when I got out of the car and this man got out of his, I think Dad thought that this man was about to say or do something. Dad rushed to my defense and they had a fight." Jesse chimed in. "Who won, Dad?" Frieda dodged. It happened very quickly. Both men fell. Without missing a beat, Jesse chimed in again. "Who fell first?" Frieda lied. "I think it was a draw." She saw that neither Lauren nor Katie were enjoying the conversation, so she added, "And they both suffered about the same injuries." Forrest got up and left. Luckily, he didn't slam the door. Frieda's father interjected, "We ordered pizza. There's some left if you want." The last thing Frieda wanted was pizza. "No, I'm not hungry. Besides, I need to go upstairs and pack Garrett's things so he can come home tomorrow." Her father grumbled, "Well, I'm still hungry." He glanced at his wife. "Do you want one? It's in the kitchen." Frieda's mom said, "No, I think I'll help Frieda." Frieda looked at her children and thought, "God, they are so beautiful. Everyone looks like a mother," then said, "You guys go watch TV for a while." The children took the hint. Father went into the kitchen. Frieda and her mother went upstairs. In Frieda and Garrett's bedroom, Leela lashed out at her. "You couldn't, right? You couldn't tell him. You should have gone and found another man. When are you going to tell Garrett that you don't love him and want to leave?" In despair and depression, Frieda replied, "Oh, Mother, don't start again. You shouldn't have gotten pregnant. You shouldn't have married him. You're still young. Take the kids. File for divorce. Make Garrett pay." "Mom," Frieda almost sobbed, "stop, please." Mom wasn't finished. She never finished. "If you divorced Garrett, I'm sure Bradley would have followed you right away." "Mom, it was 15 years ago. I have 3 children, a house, a husband, and a family. Besides, he has a wife." Her mother looked shrewdly and knew. "Don't count on all this now. Not after what you did." Frieda looked at her mother with regret. She thought, there was a time when she might have thought about leaving Garrett. Brad's wife didn't care about him. Lisa lived her own life. She had a career. Bradley was still floating around in an alcoholic haze, trying to wring a great American novel out of nothing. More clearly, she thought, she was so stupid. Brad was her high school sweetheart, her one true love. She begged him to become her first man. She told him that she didn't care how much it hurt. She would die for him. But he said no and went to college in Suwanee. But again, it didn't work. He dropped out of college. In fact, he failed. He returned home. He decided that he would still marry her. But again, out of spite or anger, or she never knew what, she turned to Garrett. She knew Garrett loved her. She knew he would do anything. And that's what he did. They got pregnant. She wanted to get pregnant, and then they got married. On their honeymoon to Niagara, her mom called. Brad was back and wanted her. But finally, it was too late. She's stuck with a calf-eyed sleepwalker and a child. Crap. Damn her mom. Damn Garrett. Damn Brad. But most of all, damn her. Look where she is now. Did she really believe that she could continue to have cheap affairs and Garrett would never find out? Did she ever really think about leaving her home, her family, and her husband for Brad? Hell no. Garrett was just skin and bones, but Bradley turned into a full-fledged whale. She would bet his waist was at least 50, no, 60 inches. She saw him. He was out of breath as he got into the car. He was also a mumbling, self-absorbed whiner who could do nothing better than complain about his wife and ungrateful and stupid publishing companies. But then, who is she? What had she ever done to deserve a man like Garrett? Well, damn it, She gave him 3 children. This must mean something. Besides, she was beautiful. No one would ever notice Garrett if she wasn't there. This led her to her next problem. How was she going to deal with this? Her mother screamed, "Did you hear me?" "I heard you, Mom. Now leave me alone." She gently pushed her mother out of the bedroom. She needed to pack Garrett's things. At the hospital, a nurse waited outside while Frida helped her husband get dressed. Garrett didn't say anything one way or the other, and she needed to start some conversation. The doctor said you have a pretty bad concussion. Listen. He said you had pneumonia. He gave us all kinds of medicine, a couple of painkillers, and an antibiotic. Yes, I know. Stephen called and said not to worry. This is good. Mom's making a place for you downstairs so you don't have to go up and down all the time. She even found a pretty decent used bed at the furniture warehouse. Your mother is a wonderful person. Scared and desperate, she pulled the cork out of the bottle. Aren't you going to say anything? About what? About what happened, what you saw? Finally, he looked at her. Are you going to leave us? Stunned, then afraid, she waved her hands. Of course not. Why would I do that? You love him, don't you? I checked your messages. I saw you in front of his house. You kissed him. She couldn't remember what she wrote in the messages and couldn't remember if she kissed him in front of his house. She knew she didn't love him. She didn't even like him. She looked at her exhausted husband, still as thin as a sliver, like a child. She didn't know what was worse, feeling guilty for marrying him or feeling embarrassed when they were together in public. She had Garrett's shirt half on and half off, and the guilt overcame her embarrassment. She put her hands on his face. You're being ridiculous. This must be a blow to the head. I don't know what messages you're talking about. I've never kissed him. For real. I mean a real kiss. And it's you anyway. Garrett was already starting to get tired. What am I? She mumbled, It's you. I married you. He muttered, You see. She saw and knew. She finished buttoning up his shirt and smoothed his hair. Let me help you sit in the wheelchair. Garrett awkwardly moved from the bed to the wheelchair. Did Stephen say anything else? No, just don't worry. She slowly wheeled her husband out into the hallway to the waiting orderly. The three of them walked along the corridor to the elevator, went down to the lobby, and went out to Frida's mother's car, who was waiting behind the wheel of Frida's Lexus. All the way home, a short one in fact, the couple thought about their own things, but kept their thoughts to themselves. For Garrett, he had almost given up. He had long suspected that the woman he had adored since school had no feelings for him. He had hopes, but he assumed that the matter with Dr. Menesky was like the trigger of a grenade. It was as if someone had pulled a pin and the marriage was ruined. Other than that, nothing mattered. Maybe he'd feel differently later, but for now, he just wanted to lie down, go to sleep, and never wake up. He had insurance. Children will be provided for. From Frieda's point of view, the doctor didn't matter. She had a family, children, and a house. She had a husband, too. Whether she loved him or not didn't really matter. She needs him, he provides security. If she could get him home, put him to bed, and let him rest, then maybe she could talk things out. Garrett was easy, she could convince him. She had a moment of uncertainty, she thought. Convinced of what? The next few days at home were like purgatory. Garrett felt sick. He didn't know and really didn't want to know what she was doing with the doctor. It was painful enough just thinking about it, so he asked her not to go into detail, and she agreed. He asked her not to say anything to the children. She agreed with this too. It was a huge effort to get Forrest to promise to try to be kind. Forrest tried, but didn't try too hard. He was talking on the phone with Stephen, his older brother. Stephen knew. Forrest told him, but Stephen never really respected Frieda. They mostly discussed their business options. It was difficult to concentrate, but several opportunities arose. Forrest decided to delay college and pick up some of the work that Garrett couldn't do because of his injuries. Garrett and Stephen were discussing what he, Garrett, might still be able to do when he returned. They also talked about some of his architectural ideas. Frida's mom and dad came almost every day. Even though he was placed in the far corner of the family room, he could still hear almost everything. The problem was not falling asleep. The doctors prescribed him something called meclizine. It was a prolonged action, and as soon as he began to come to his senses, the medicine would knock him out again. He still heard a lot. Layla came almost every day. He heard her and his wife sitting and chatting in the kitchen. He knew she never really approved of him. He was deceiving himself. She hated him from the very beginning. She had always considered him inferior to her daughter, but he had heard her admit that he was a good provider, and the 3 grandchildren he had helped give her were like the sun and stars. He believed that she still had some vague hope that Frida would leave him. At least that's what she sounded like. She kept talking about Frida's old school friend. She talked about him as if he were still available. Garrett remembered a lot of things, but lying on the bed in the family room, everything seemed so mixed up. If only he could put everything in order. Frida adored a boy named Bradley McPherson, but he left her for college, not right away, of course. He was older, and after finishing school, he remained around for some time. Garrett seemed to remember Bradley bragging about his big plans to become a famous writer. He remembered Bradley telling Frieda that he would wait a year, and he and Frieda would go to the same college. Yes, he filled Frida's head with promises, but in the spring of her senior year, he ran away. He went to some college in the south, in Suwanee. Garrett knew this because Frieda told him. He remembered Frida's father. Her father attended Cornell. After Cornell, he went to seminary and became a Presbyterian minister. Frieda's father wanted his son to go to Cornell, but when he didn't, he expected Frieda to go there. Frida's old friend was Bradley McPherson. Bradley and I were the same age. She thought he would wait for her and they would go to Cornell together. This didn't happen. He escaped, went to Suwanee. Bradley leaving and all the pressure at home must have been too much for her. This was supposed to be her big spring. She looked around for someone else and found me. I was easy to find. Frieda was on the girls' soccer team at school, and I went to almost every game and sat and watched and cheered for her. What Frieda was thinking was a mystery, but I remember that I didn't care. I used to love her. Maybe she thought Bradley would come back, but he didn't, at least not right away. I remember hearing her calling him all the time, but he never answered. Then she called me. I was the happiest person in the world. I attended community college and worked for my father. I had a job, money, and high hopes. I remember one day, it was in May, and I went to Frieda right after school. Her parents weren't home, and she sat in their living room, sobbing into her pillow. I tried to console her. I held her. I brought paper towels to dry her tears. I begged her to tell me what happened, but she didn't. A couple of days later, I learned the whole truth from one of her friends. Bradley had a girlfriend in college. Frieda cried for Bradley. She cried on my shoulder for another guy. I think it was time when I should have stopped, but I was too young, too naive, and too in love. Damn, looking back, it was wrong. I did everything I could to make Frieda love me. I took her everywhere, bought her things, and paid attention to her. If she needed something, I would drop everything, and all this time she would call Bradley, begging him to come back to her. But he didn't return. Then she changed. Almost instantly, she began to be kind to me. I was over the moon. I thought that what happened in the spring and summer was love. Probably not for her. Frieda and I were a couple, but only I carried the banner. However, we went everywhere together. It never occurred to me that she wanted all of Bradley's old friends to see us. I took her to the prom. I thought we, were the perfect couple. Frieda didn't talk much, but that was always her way, at least with me. I told her I loved her every chance I got. One day she said that she loved me threefold. It was the best I got, but it made me happy. On the night of her graduation, we stayed under the stars. We made love. We kissed and hugged. Well, I made love to her. Later, not much later, we got married. Sometimes since then, I have wondered who she was thinking about that night. In those few weeks, we were like two lovebirds. I was so in love. We made love almost every night. She planned to go to Cornell, but it didn't matter. We still made love almost every night. Then, towards the end of the summer, we found out that she was pregnant. I was delighted. I thought she did too. We got married. I never thought about it then, but her father did not marry us. He left for some seminar. We did what my mom and dad did. We got married in court. In October, we went to Niagara Falls for our honeymoon. Of course, Frida had already started to show a little, but where else would two young people go without much money? The start of our honeymoon was amazing. Frida covered me with love and affection. One day, she even said that she loved me. Hearing this from her was like a dream come true. But then everything went to hell, and I didn't even know why, at least not for a while. What happened? While we were on our honeymoon, Frida's mother Leela called and told Frida that Bradley was back and wanted to see her. He said he was willing to give up everything, college, his college girlfriend, everything for a second chance with her. Although Frida was pregnant, Leela was confident that Bradley would take her and the baby. All she had to do was get rid of me. Leela might be right. If hindsight were anything to go by, I think Frida thought so too, but when we returned from Niagara, the truth came out. This didn't happen right away. Only a couple of years later, Rita Braga and Sally Fredrickson, two of Frida's childhood friends, told me. Bradley didn't come back for Frida. He was simply too lazy to succeed in college. The first winter, I felt completely lost. We hadn't bought a house yet, but almost every day after I left for work, Leela would come to our apartment, talk about Bradley, talk about what Bradley said and what he wanted. I knew this because Frida told her friends, and then they told me. There were two things, well, maybe three, that kept me from taking decisive action. First of all, I loved Frida deeply and passionately, plus I never fully trusted her friends. Secondly, there was Lauren. She was just a baby, my baby. One last thing, I was just afraid. I loved Frida so much that I could not bear the thought that she might want to leave me. I know I was a coward. This didn't stop Leela. She continued to do everything she could to keep us apart. The best way she knew to do this was to point out my many shortcomings while promoting Bradley's many advantages. It almost worked, but then Bradley married Monroe's girlfriend. How strange she turned out to be. Lisa Monroe was a meddling gossip, far inferior to Bradley. Luckily for Bradley, she had good business sense. She became the head of something in some software company and made a lot of money. Yes, she made money, and Bradley just lay around the house, eating pizza, drinking beer, gaining weight, and talking about his writing. But according to Leela, Bradley needed a source of inspiration, and Frida was perfect for the role. Then there was Frida's father, Hector Cavendish, a Presbyterian minister. I never liked that son of a bitch. He may have been a pastor for almost 50 years, but all I saw in him was a hypocritical scoundrel. Much older than Leela, more mature, domineering, and overly critical, he kept the house to strict limits, no objections, no arguments. From a distance, he must have seen some of his wife's tendencies. Leela was emotionally unstable. If they ever took her to a doctor, she would probably be diagnosed with acute depression. I didn't know it then and wouldn't have understood it if I had, but all the symptoms were there. Prolonged periods of sadness, feigning non-existent illnesses, unexplained bouts of crying, poor appetite, various sleep disorders from insomnia to reluctance to get out of bed for several days. There were recurring attacks of anxiety, long periods of persistent lethargy, and a general inability to concentrate or complete a task. There were also thoughts about death. I was told that she tried to do this twice. In the end, he arranged for her to be a companion. As far as I knew, Frida and Leela were told that the women who came and went over the years were more like permanent housekeepers. There were three, two were hired, and the last one was Aunt Ginger. Her father didn't seem to know what to do. He was an important man. He had a flock to pray for. The bastard was more concerned with saving the souls of people he barely knew than with his own family, so he stayed away. My mom and dad never went to church. They never took us around. My father once said that the people in the church are all hypocrites. I think old Cavendish was annoyed when he found out that his daughter was pregnant and would not go to his precious Cornell. I hated my wife's parents. Her brother was fine. Hell, he was in San Diego. What could he do to us? Frida didn't know what to do. Every day since Garrett had returned home, he had either sat in the old rocking chair they had brought in or lay in bed, half asleep. She sat across the room in an old rocking chair, reading and waiting. She just didn't know what to do. Sometimes it seemed to her that he was deliberately trying to torment her. If this was the case, he was successful. It was especially bad the other day. He didn't hear her come in, or if he did, he didn't show it. She sat down opposite him. He sat in his rocking chair with his eyes closed, quietly humming an old Robert Duvall song. She remembered the words. She gave him everything she had, and that was a lot, but love and sex are not the same thing. She had to leave. What did she give him? She didn't even pretend to love him. She wanted to die. Bradley called again. He said that he and Lisa were having problems and he wanted to talk. Once upon a time, perhaps, she would have jumped at this chance, but not now. He has already used the old, "Lisa doesn't understand me" trick several times. It didn't take her long to figure out what Bradley really wanted. Although he could have, he didn't win her in high school. Now, with Garrett, she knew what Bradley was up to, and it wasn't going to happen. She remembered her old flame, Bradley McPherson. Once upon a time, he may have been what was called handsome, but that's not the case anymore. These days, he looked like what he really was, a fat, lazy, worthless loser, living off the hard work of a devoted and, albeit conditionally, loving wife. Lisa told her a lot about her husband Bradley. Bradley didn't get anything at home. Lisa said all he did was sit on the couch and watch skinny old women like Kelly Ripa on TV. Frida saw Bradley the other day. Imagine how he tried to suck in his big belly. Men like him had no waist. They're just big fat ovals with a doughy middle. What a fool she was. He never loved her, probably didn't even like her. Now she knew what he wanted. She didn't want it then, but now she does. She knew she was beautiful. She knew that men desired her. She always saw it on their faces, their lustful looks. Garrett had never looked at her like that. What should she do now? Garrett wasn't talking, and she was afraid. Oh, Garrett. Garrett was unlike anyone else she knew. It's funny, she never thought of Garrett as muscular, and he wasn't. He was thin, wiry, unremarkable, not like many of the better educated and more sophisticated men with whom she often worked, and not at all like the husbands of her friends. There were men like the doctor she was with before. They had money, they went to gyms and spas, they played sports, they were fit, their bodies were sculpted, well-shaped. Not Garrett. He was just Garrett, skinny, inconspicuous Garrett. In jeans and a t-shirt, he looked more like a skinny teenager than a man. His arms were strong, but they looked like small biceps, thin and weak forearms. He had thin hands, but he was a master carpenter. He worked on the street. He worked 18 hours a day in the summer heat, and then outside in the bitter cold of winter. She had seen him come home during the coldest months, red-faced and numb, but drenched in sweat. He could work all day lifting and manipulating heavy objects. He could erect a house, tile a roof, pour concrete, lay bricks, work marble, lift and carry heavy, unruly sheets of drywall, and could cut moldings, install kitchen cabinets and granite countertops with the precision of a skilled artist. Garrett was an unusual person, an anomaly. He played the clarinet and piano with breathtaking precision. He could sit at the computer and design a unique home. He was an experienced surveyor who had never been to school, but she had seen him regularly check and sometimes correct the work of people who were earning twice as much for half the work. Yes, Garrett was strange, always had been. With the build of a teenager, the strength of a weightlifter, and the tenacity of a marathon runner. Was he brave? She didn't think so. She had seen him back down from a dozen fights, but at the same time she had seen him act decisively when someone was in trouble. When Lauren was hit by a car, Garrett jumped into the road and pulled her to safety. There were a lot of cars there. He almost died himself. Then he was also hit on the head. He didn't think about it. Once on the beach, with a strong current, he saved some child whom they did not even know. She remembered how scared she was. Garrett could barely swim. But somehow he pulled this boy out. Who could forget? In high school, playing football and lacrosse, He always looked scared, kind of timid. The big boys sometimes pushed him on the bench. She once saw a big lineman push him right off the edge of the bench. Garrett stood up and did nothing. He just stood there. But he tried, not always successfully, but always tried. I think, like many girls back then, she thought he was something of a wimp. However, in all the years that she was married to him, he was a good guy, a caring husband, an attentive lover, a funny companion, a wonderful father, always cheerful, always there. She never doubted how much he loved her. Good old reliable, caring, loyal Garrett, and she betrayed him. Why did she marry him? Why was she always so ashamed of him? She knew. He just wasn't who he was supposed to be. It just didn't look right. Patrick Swayze, Dirty Dancing, Roadhouse. This was the man. She looked across the family room. Her mind was in turmoil, her thoughts racing. He's been home for over a week now. There he sat. He was reading an old book by F. Scott Fitzgerald. When he looked up at her, it was always the same unhappy look. He'll get better. He will leave her. He will take the children. She will be left all alone. What should she do now? Why doesn't he look at her? Why doesn't he say anything? Please say something. She couldn't stand it anymore. Garrett, she muttered. Garrett, a little louder. Then loudly, Garrett. He looked up at her. Yes? Aren't you going to say anything? For example, don't you want to ask what happened? Why did I do this? He put the book down. Okay, what happened and why did you do it? Carried away by her tangled thoughts, she felt like she was drowning. Is that all you're going to ask? Letting the book fall to the floor, he returned the chair to its original position, stood up from it, and pointed to the kitchen. Finally, she thought. She almost jumped out of her chair and rushed to the kitchen. Slowly, Garrett followed her. In the kitchen, he walked over to the coffee maker, turned to the sink, and poured water into it. Carefully and methodically, he picked up the coffee can and paper filters. He poured 4 spoons of coffee, parked the car, and took 2 cups out of the cabinet. He placed the cups on the table along with 2 spoons and a sugar bowl. He went to the refrigerator and took out cream. He stared blindly out the window, thinking, making decisions, and waiting for the coffee to spill into the pot. Frida sat nervously and waited. Finally, the coffee was ready. He poured himself and Frida a cup each. He sat down opposite her at the table and asked almost solemnly, "How much?" "How much of what?" Frida answered timidly. "Men," he answered. "Total?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. She took a sip of coffee. She swallowed. "After Jesse, there are 3. I know them?" "Garrett, please." "I know them. You know who they are, but you don't know them." "Okay, who are they?" "Oh, Garrett, please. Does it matter?" "Yes, it has. Who were they?" She took another sip of coffee. She noticed that Garrett hadn't touched him. "Well, there's a doctor. You know about him." "You mean Dr. Menesky?" "Yes, and then there was this college professor and a lawyer." "You said I knew them." "Garrett, I'm so sorry. It won't happen again. I was confused. I never enjoyed this." "You said I know them." "Well, I know who the doctor is. What about the other 2? She bit her lip, gripped the table, raised one hand anxiously, and shook it lightly. "Garrett, the kids' school. They'll be home soon." "The other 2. She took another sip of coffee. "I feel bad now." "Who are they?" he asked. "The lawyer's name was Pasquale." "No, Pasquale, Rudy de Pasquale." "The college professor's name was Alan Fishburne. He teaches computer courses at the local college." She really felt sick, nauseous. "Garrett, I feel sick." He shrugged. "Okay, go lie down or something. We'll talk later when the kids go to bed." She began to do things that she had not done for a long time under Garrett. She started crying. She stood up, ran out of the kitchen, and ran upstairs. As Garrett watched her run away, he thought about what she said, but more importantly, what she didn't say. He knew both men. One way or another, they were both involved in Frida's charitable affairs. Each of them was introduced to him at one of those events that Frida always supported or sponsored. Both performances were fleeting and initiated by men, not Frida. It was common for him to feel uncomfortable at Frida's charity events. Often he found some excuse not to be present, excuses that Frida never questioned. He remembered feeling particularly uncomfortable at events where he met these men. Now he knew why. The question now was, what was he going to do about it? He needed more information, but first he needed to get better and find a new way to support his family, if he even still had a family to support. Then he stopped. Damn it. He needed to know, and he needed to know now. He rose heavily to his feet and shuffled to the foot of the stairs. Frida, he shouted. No answer. He shouted again, Frida. There was still no answer. He put his foot on the bottom step. Frida, if you don't get your damn ass down in 2 minutes, I'll come up. I may not make it, but if I do, I'll give you a thrashing you won't soon forget. In the shadows, he saw Frida at the top of the stairs. She mumbled weakly, Garrett, I feel bad. He didn't care. He was through, no more nonsense. Get your damn ass down right now. He screamed so loudly that he almost lost his balance. Frida walked about halfway down and sat down. Garrett. Feeling fully functional for the first time in a long time, he pointed to where he stood and shouted, right here, right now. Frida walked hesitantly down the steps until she stood in front of him. Yes, was her timid answer. He grabbed the railing tightly. Put on your coat and go out to your car. Which one? She asked. Lexus. A few minutes later, together, she in the driver's seat and he in the passenger seat, they were speeding down the road. Frida asked, Where are we going? Hampton on Route #81. They drove to the Hampton Inn in silence. There, having checked in and found himself in the room, Garrett began to undress. He looked at his wife. What are you waiting for? What? Take off your clothes. She was overcome with fear and anxiety. Should I call home? Children? He stood next to the bed, completely undressed, and she couldn't help but smile, despite their situation. He pulled back the blanket and sheet and climbed inside. They'll be fine. Now take off your clothes and get into bed. She obeyed. She lay down and lay on her side as far away from her husband as possible. In the past, this would have been the time when Garrett would have tried to persuade her. He had done this many times before, but this time he wasn't looking for sex or affection, he wanted information. Okay, now tell me about the doctor. Dr. Menisci? There is no other? No. What do you want to know? That's it. Start from the beginning. And Frida began. I met the doctor at a charity event. I don't remember which one. I think it was for childhood illnesses, maybe asthma. He was handsome and charming. You met him once and you liked him. I think you did too. He liked me. I knew that he was married, but I decided that I would win him. I'll conquer, Garrett asked. What do you mean? She continued, It wasn't sex. I don't think it was. I wanted to be with him, to use him, to control him. I've done that before. He was an easy target. That was in January. I talked him into meeting. We even scheduled it for a Thursday afternoon, the time he usually played golf, but it was winter, so golf wasn't that big of a deal, I guess, and within a week we were in bed here in the world. Hampton. Nervous and unhappy, Garrett would have preferred to stop here, but he had to continue. He said, Yes, and then what? And what did you expect? She saw the look in her husband's eyes, that helpless calf look. She hesitated, but continued. We met, had sex, and went home. What did I want? What did I expect? I don't know. I just felt the need. I don't know why. It just happened. We did it and agreed to meet again in a couple of weeks. And met. When? Garrett asked. It was in February, the same week as Katie's birthday. I remember this because I went to Nordstrom and bought her a beautiful dress. Anyway, after our second meeting, I knew I had to stop. Emotionally exhausted, Garrett asked, Why? He said he thought he was falling in love with me. He said he wanted to see me more often, and he wanted more. I then realized that I didn't want him. I didn't even like him, but we agreed to meet again. He called through a few days, and we agreed to meet in March. Then, when I caught you. Yes. Were you planning to meet him again? Frida squirmed, moving away as far away from my husband as possible. No, I mean yes. I said he could call me again, but I knew the next time would be the last. He just wasn't the one I wanted. Garrett saw Frida's attempt to distance herself, but it didn't matter. He sighed and asked, "What did you want?" Frida rolled over onto her back and stared at the ceiling. I don't know. I just knew that he didn't have it. Garrett was faced with the truth. I don't have what you're looking for either, do I? Frida glanced but avoided eye contact. You are my husband. What is this supposed to mean, Frieda? She rolled over and looked at him. Did you know all three of them were using pills? Impatient and slightly annoyed, Garrett asked, what does it mean to you when you say I'm your husband? She rolled over again. I thought it was funny. You've never used sex pills. He propped himself up on one elbow. Why would I? Because we almost never did anything. She asked, can we go home now? Realizing that he wouldn't get an answer to his question, he changed the subject. Tell me about the college professor. About him, she began. He was older and not even a professor, just a teacher. I met him at a charity event. He was talking about new software. I was interested in him. I thought he was cute. He wasn't married, so I invited him to dinner. We had lunch and then went to his house. It was 2 years ago in January after the holidays. I saw him only 3 times. He was soft, doughy. She glanced at Garrett. The doctor was like that too. Garrett felt himself being carried away. His head hurt terribly, and he felt intense pain associated with his concussion. He needed to take something, a handful of ibuprofen, maybe meclizine. Go on, he said. Frida smiled. In a way, it was like some story she could read, as if it wasn't about her. He was so nice. At first, he was like some kind of Prince Charming, but he wasn't to them. He was just another man. Garrett said, so you left him. Did you even think about me? Surprised, she looked at him. Yes, of course. You are my husband. You love me. Of course, I thought about you. I thought about how much better you are. I thought about you a lot. Tell me, Frida, do you love me? She looked at him again. Garrett saw that lost look he had seen so many times before. He remembered his thoughts about Minerva. He remembered her archery practice in the backyard. She really was cold, cold and dead. Frida replied, what is love? It's like a bird. You hold it in your hands and it's yours, but if you let go, it will fly away. Garrett wasn't sure he was interested in what she would say next, but the last man remained. Tell me about the lawyer. About him, she said. That was 2 years ago. Well, there was this year, last year, and the year before. Yes, 2 years ago. He was at a charity event. Like the doctor, he was married. The lawyer was my first. I thought he would be the one. You know, the one who would be the one. But he wasn't. We met 3 times, here in Hampton, probably in this very room. After the first time, I realized that he was the one. I don't like it, but we still met 2 more times. I don't remember why. All I can say is that he wasn't like you. What makes me different, Frida? Is it because you love me? Frida finally sat down. She fluffed the pillows. Do you remember Aunt Ginger? Of course I remember Aunt Ginger. I loved Aunt Ginger. Frida thought she had found a way out. I loved her too. I told her what I did. I told her how I used you to get Bradley's attention. How I tried to get Bradley back by making everyone we knew see me with you. Then, when he didn't come back, I let you get me pregnant. It's funny, isn't it? I was in love with Bradley, but you made me happy. You didn't care. I didn't love you. You loved me anyway. You still love me. Tell me, Garrett. Garrett gave in temporarily. Yeah, I guess I still love you, but then, despite the pain, he pulled himself together, regained his composure. I love you, but you don't love me. Frida lay down again and turned to her husband. She placed a cool hand on his cheek. She touched his forehead. It was hot to the touch. "You're still very sick. Let's go home. I'll make you chicken noodle soup and put you to bed." He sat up. "Frida, damn it. Say it. It's been 15 damn years. Do you love me or not?" She also sat down. She reached out her fingers and touched his cheeks. With tears in her eyes, she whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." It was an act of extreme will, but he jumped out of bed, then fell onto the bedside lamp. "Damn it, Frida. Yes or no? Do you love me?" She fell to the floor next to him. "Everything I've done. These men. Blaming you for Jesse. I love Jesse. Forcing you to love me, marry me, get me pregnant. I'm sorry. My mother for everything she said. I'm sorry. My father for everything he said about your family. What my mother said about Bradley, that I should leave you. Aunt Ginger told me that I should be happy. She told me that I love you. And I really love you. But now you're going to leave me, aren't you? I've finally ruined everything. Oh, I wish I was dead." How much of it was truth? How much of it was self-pity? How much of it was Frida's melodrama? How much of it was something else that neither of them understood? He didn't know. Finally, he said, "Come on, darling, help me get home." She surprised him. "You said, honey, it's nice." She pulled herself and her husband to their feet. "Let's get dressed, then I'll take you home." The whole way home, Frida talked nonstop. "Honey, Garrett, you just don't know how hard it was. Mom kept arguing with me and telling me what to do all my life. Mom's a little crazy, you know. She tried to commit suicide twice. And Dad had his congregation. It was harder for him than for all of us. Imagine being the pastor of the same church for as long as he was, and his first church was only a few miles from our house. He watched all his old friends grow old, and they died. He goes to the same hospitals, to the same rooms, year after year. It's like a deadly monotony. I heard him pray." Garrett interrupted. "Have you ever heard him pray for you, for us, for our family?" "Of course, I guess. It wouldn't matter anyway. He has a lot of responsibilities." "Frida, why did you sleep with other men?" Her foot pressed the gas pedal and the car jumped slightly. "I already told you." "No, I didn't. If I did, I wouldn't understand. Do you remember Diane Keaton?" Frida hesitated. "Yes, of course. She played Elena in that movie with Brad Pitt. You know, Troy." Garrett laughed, even though he wasn't that stupid. "No, stupid. You're thinking about Diane Kruger. Diane Keaton was in an old movie called Looking for Mr. Goodbar. My dad mentioned it once when he met you. He said that you were someone looking for Mr. Goodbar." She was indignant. "I'm not stupid. I just didn't have a father who watched old films. And what does that even mean?" Nervous about what he was thinking, he replied, "My father told me about this when he was alive. A lot of the movie was about a real girl who lived in a religious family. Then, when she graduated from college, she kind of went inclined, looking for the best sex, the best man, and the most exciting life. In other words, she became a real woman of easy virtue. In the end, she was killed." "Do you think I'm a woman of easy virtue?" Garrett looked at her. "You." Frida countered, "No, of course not. They have no values. They have sex for money. They don't care who they hurt as long as they get paid." Frida pressed her hand to her chest. Garrett didn't know if it was fake or sincere. Then she said, "You're going to leave me, aren't you?" He replied, "What would you do if you were me?" She lied. She knew what she would really do. "I would forgive you. We would try very hard and fix everything. We would do it for the sake of the children and the wonderful family that we built for so long. I know that I could do it, and I know you could too." Garrett just looked at her. He tried to hide his bewilderment, but in his opinion, his patience was running out. "Frida, we just left the Hampton Inn. I suggested going there for a reason. Do you know what that reason was?" "So we could talk things through. Of course I understood that. You needed to hear some things, and you needed to express your feelings to take the weight off yourself." No, Frida. I thought that maybe we could connect again. Maybe we would fall into each other's arms and make love, I thought. And then Garrett realized that the fantasy was over. Long hidden and suppressed feelings finally came out. Frida, I can't remember when I didn't love you. I love you now, and of course I love our children that we created together, but I don't think that will be enough. Frida sped up. Don't talk now. We're almost home and you're too tired. No, Frida, that's it. Stop the car. I can't, she said. Traffic. There's no traffic here. Stop the car. He pointed to the gas and go up the road. Stop there. Stupidly, still not fully understanding, she turned and parked. Garrett turned to his wife of 15 years. Wait here. I'll be back in a minute. He got out of the car and walked into the store. He needed to do it, now or never, but his head. He walked over to the medicine counter and grabbed 2 bottles of ibuprofen. He then went to the coffee aisle and made himself a very large cup of black coffee. He paid, but before going back out, he swallowed 5 tablets. Of course, it was too much, and of course they wouldn't work right away, but who cares now? He got out and got back into the car. He was ready. As soon as he sat down, she pointed at his coffee. You didn't get mine. He took a long sip of his hot drink. No, now listen and shut up. And he began. Like I said, and I said it over and over and over again. I said it until I was blue in the face. I love you. But you know what? He looked at her and realized that she still didn't understand, but she would soon understand. You don't love me and never have. You married me for the reasons you gave, to punish other people. We only had Lauren because you knew there would be no turning back after she was born. You weren't looking for Mr. Goodbar. Because you never thought about the future beyond tomorrow. You talk about fidelity like it's a card game. No, we didn't get married in the church, but that's because your damn father didn't want to humiliate himself to marry you to me. She tried to interrupt, but he stopped her and continued. For you, it wasn't Bradley or some doctor or some half-crazed lawyer or teacher. For you, it was listening to Leela, doing what Mom wanted, obeying. Mom always knew better. I've been hearing you and her for 15 years. I've been hearing you and her in the kitchen for the last few weeks. I may be sick with love, but I'm not stupid no more. She trembled at his speech and behavior. Garrett. Damn it, Frida, I said shut up. He continued. As he began to talk, he remembered the old Kenny Rogers song, Coward of the County. Well, he was about to turn around and close the door. Frida, when we get home, I want you to pack all your things. You have to move out. We'll do this together. Tonight, you can either go to your parents or go back to Hampton. Either way, you're leaving. In a few days, we'll find you a trailer at the park on Water Tank Road. I'll even help you with the furniture. We'll buy you some good used furniture at the furniture warehouse. I'll get you your own cell phone because you won't be on our old account anymore. You'll be able to call and meet with anyone anytime without worrying about getting caught. How's that for having your own nest of sin? Frida still didn't believe it. But Garrett, our marriage, children, what will people say? He added, marriage? What marriage? You mean me, the slave, and you, the mistress. It's gone. I would say you killed him, but he never existed. He wondered to himself, where did all this come from? He continued, I promised to love, respect, appreciate, and be faithful. You promised that too. Well, none of that happened, not from you. You never loved me, and you shamed me at every turn. Oh, he was hot. All these damn charity events. You never introduced me to anyone. You moved as far away from me as possible every time. I saw you sneakingly watching me. I felt like the poor relative that everyone knew, but they tried to hide it. I was not your husband. I was your shameful poor relative. Now it will be you in the trailer park. After all, what would a man call a woman who cheats on her husband? Frida, you know what he would call her. He would call her trailer park trash, and that's exactly what you are. He hated to say it, but it was the truth. He continued, love, honor, and loyalty. You don't know the meaning of those words. Hey, you can call Bradley. Maybe he'll leave his wife now. He could move in with you. You have a trust fund from Aunt Ginger. You and I could watch adult videos together. Hey, I'll even buy you a flat-screen TV. She cried, she repeated. But the children, our home and our family, what will people say? Tired, but not completely finished, he finished. Don't worry. It will hurt, but I'll tell the children why I kicked you out. I'll tell them everything. I think they already suspect it. The house, fortunately, is only in my name. I paid all the bills. Besides, we're not getting divorced. We're just breaking up. No alimony. It's my family, don't worry. I'll tell them. If necessary, I'll go to every bar between here and Mechanic Willem. I'll tell everyone I meet that I was a cuckold. I'll even tell them where you live so they can get you. Crying heavily, she could only say, Garrett. He laughed. It's better to laugh than to cry. He added, I need a house. I've thought of everything. I can still do carpentry, I just won't do roofing anymore. I'll do masonry, drywall, and trim. What's more, I'm a good planner. You don't need special permission to show people what a real mansion could look like, and I know what even your brother admitted. Yes, I'll take your old office and turn it into something. And while I do all this with Stephen and Forrest, I hope. Someday with Jesse, you can watch from your porch in the trailer park. I'll even buy you an old used couch that you can put outside and sit on. I'll buy you a refrigerator so you can store your beer in it. Now, start the damn car and take me home. Tears streamed down her beautiful face. But Garrett, I thought we were going to make up. Shall we make peace? No way. This ship has sailed. Garrett fully intended to do everything he said. He'll kick this bitch out. He will get her away from himself and the children. And he'll make sure that damn mother-in-law stays away so she doesn't infect his girls or son. He thought that somewhere there was a woman, perhaps older than him, with children, who had also been burned. Garrett wasn't going to be picky. Although no, he was. He had a heartless, soulless, beautiful goddess. Now he will find a woman, a real woman. She doesn't have to be beautiful, just someone who will truly love him, stay with him, and be faithful and devoted. He knew that such a woman existed. He will start looking tomorrow. He felt good. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. 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 Click to the next one.